The other big news coming out of Smackdown on Friday, outside of the Randy Orton, Kevin Owens angle that I already talked about earlier, Nick Aldis, the general manager, announced a brand new women's championship. This has been rumored for some time now. A brand new mid-card women's United States championship is being introduced, and they showed the title, and it is as uncreative and unimaginative a design as you would expect. It is the same U.S. title design that the men have. It's a smaller belt with a white strap, and it says women's on it. Look, I wish that they would be more creative with these designs, but you got to remember, to them, it's all about brand consistency. We see it on Raw. Look at the World Heavyweight title for the men. What do the women have? A smaller version of the World Heavyweight Championship, but on a white strap. And I assume the word women or women's is on there somewhere. It's about consistency. I don't like it either, but that's why they do it. But this has been rumored for some time now, and we've talked about this on the show. I've gotten questions about the introduction of a women's mid-card title, and it's not just that I expected it, but I thought if ever there was a time for them to introduce one, now would make sense if they wanted to try it on the main roster. They tried it in NXT. We have the Women's North American Championship. That was only introduced in June. Hasn't been that long. But I almost feel like it was sort of a testing ground for what was to come with the main roster. And now here we are. If anything, I'm a little surprised they're going with a U.S. title and not a women's intercontinental title, although that could still potentially happen. But that also goes to, how is this going to work? Is this SmackDown exclusive? It was Nick Aldis who made the announcement. There was no Adam Pearce. There was no mention in his speech about Monday Night Raw. I did go back because I missed it the first time. I went back when the segment was over. They cut to the announcers. And Michael Cole did say Raw and SmackDown. He specifically mentioned this as, again, I didn't write down the exact verbiage, but he did mention Raw and SmackDown being a part of this. So based on that, it does sound like the title will float. And I like that. I think that's the way to go. I said that the other night. I said, I'm not sure which way they're going with it. I wish it would float. I wish it would be like the women's tag team titles, where you are allowed to defend it across different shows and it's not brand exclusive. Sounds like that's going to be the case. Now, if they were going to go the other way and have one title for each show, then it would be better to wait until the beginning of the year, because Raw and SmackDown are expected to both be going 3 hours. God help me. But it sounds like they're both going 3 hours in January. And when they do that, they're going to have to call up more women from NXT. If they don't call them up in January, they're going to have to call them up shortly thereafter. They're going to need more faces. And if there is one thing that NXT has a lot of, it is a surplus of female talent. Then it might make more sense to have an intercontinental title on Raw and a US title on SmackDown. But one of the reasons I'm okay with them trying this, and generally speaking, I'm not a fan of oversaturating these shows with championships, right? We've seen this in WWE before. We see this right now in AEW. Too many titles. The thing with AEW is you have titles from fucking everywhere. You have AEW titles, you have Ring of Honor titles, you have New Japan titles. So there's so many belts, and it's just ridiculous. One of the reasons I'm okay with them trying this, it might help them focus more on story when it comes to the women who are not involved directly with the World Championship. Right now, in Nia Jax's orbit, she has Liv Morgan was just wrestling her at Crown Jewel for the Crown Jewel Championship, right? That's over with now. So now Nia, she still has Tiffany Stratton as her BFF, shadowing her and threatening to cash in everywhere she goes. Nia wrapped up a feud with Bayley, and now she's got this going on. She's going to be wrestling Naomi coming up on SmackDown this week. All this stuff revolves around Nia and the Women's World Championship on SmackDown. Very few times can you find a women's angle, let's just stick with SmackDown here, that does not revolve around the World Championship, where they put any sort of real effort into it to make it interesting in any way. We just had a program with Chelsea Green and Meechin. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it lit the world on fire, but it was nice to see them put effort into something that didn't involve Nia Jax. right? They paid it off in a dumpster match, made a whole big deal about it. Chelsea walked around for weeks, smelling like shit. It was something. But you have to come up with something for these other women to do because not everybody is going to be challenging Nia Jax. So what does everybody else do? Not much. Maybe this will help in that regard. Maybe this will force them into a situation where, okay, we have to come up with other things now for these other women to do. If that means we have to give somebody else another title in order to do it, then so be it. Because you can add up all the championships you want. You could have a women's intercontinental title, a women's US title. You can anything you want to. If you don't have good creative to back it up, it doesn't mean anything. Nobody cares. So who wins it? On Friday, when I thought it was going to be brand exclusive, I ran down the SmackDown women's roster, which we'll do again here real quick. Nia Jax, take her out because she's the world champion. Tiffany Stratton has the briefcase to cash in for a world title shot. I mean, there's no point in her cashing in for any other title. Charlotte Flair is going to be back any month now. She's right in that time frame where she should be all healed up. If she's not medically cleared, she will be soon. It's just a matter of whether or not they're going to hold off on her for the Royal Rumble, because I guarantee you she'll be back by then. So does Charlotte Flair go after this brand new U.S. title? Oh, you bet your ass she'll go after it at some point. Do I think you need to put the U.S. title on her right now and have her as the first champion? Absolutely not. But she's still out right now. We'll put her on the side. You've got Bayley. You've got Naomi, who is challenging for the World Championship this Friday. Bianca Belair, Jade Cargill, Chelsea Green, Blair Davenport, who I assume is still employed. I can't remember the last time I saw her. Candice LeRae, Piper Niven, Michin. You've got B-Fab and you've got Elektra Lopez. They don't wrestle, though, on the main roster. At least not yet. So we'll put them on the side. I look at this roster, and if we're talking SmackDown only, who are the best options from the SmackDown side, I think, to be a good first pick for a U.S. champion? I come up with 3 names. Naomi, Chelsea, and Michin. I like Chelsea. Chelsea Green for U.S. champion would be my pick if we're sticking to SmackDown only. If we're going to expand that out to Raw, well, now you have more options on the Raw women's roster. Liv Morgan is the women's world champion. Take her out. Put her on the side. Raquel Rodriguez is her heavy, right? Her bodyguard, her backup, her insurance policy. Raquel, you got to consider Raquel as a very real possibility. Rhea Ripley is injured. And even if she wasn't, she's not wrestling for a mid-card title. Put her on the side. Io Sky. I love Io Sky. Io Sky, though, is going to be challenging very soon for the women's world title. So we'll put her on the side. Kairi Sane, Lyra Valkyria. We have Alba Fire, Isla Dawn, Shayna Baszler, Zoe Stark, Sonya Deville, who I don't think has looked great at all since coming back, although we haven't seen much of her lately. Kaden Carter, Katana Chance, Zelina Vega, Natalya, Ivy Nile, Maxine Dupree. Scarlett doesn't wrestle for them, so we'll put her on the side. Asuka is injured, Dakota Kai is injured, and Kiana James is injured, I think with a ACL. That's the women's roster on Raw. From Raw, if I had to pick 3 that stand out, I think you're looking at Raquel, Lyra, or Ivy Nile. And of those 3, Lyra Valkyria would be my pick. They've toned down her push these last few months because she got a little push there coming out of the gate. Becky Lynch, before she left, kind of tried to give her a little bit of the rub. They were doing segments together. But I think Lyra would be my pick from the Raw side. I think also it would be better to go with the babyface to balance things out. You got 2 heel women's champions right now. For how much longer, I don't know. But right now you have 2 heel women's champions. So if you're going to crown a U.S. champion, let's say in the next 30 days, I think you want it to be a babyface. So that's why I would give the edge to Lyra over Chelsea. But those are the 2 names, one from each show. If I had to really kind of look at these rosters and say, who do I think would make a good first candidate for this? Those are the 2 names that I come up with. But then there's another question here. How do you do it? They didn't announce anything as far as how they're going to crown the champion. Is there going to be a tournament? Is there going to be a battle royal? Is there going to be a lottery? We don't know. Let's assume that the title floats. We're not going to get Adam Pearce showing up on Monday night, right, tomorrow night to introduce an intercontinental title. If they have a title that floats, then I think a co-branded tournament like the one they did for the World Heavyweight title last year would make sense, where they had talent from Raw and SmackDown. Now, that one actually did not make sense because that was exclusively a Raw title, and they had SmackDown people wrestling for a Raw title with the idea that if they won, they would be forced to switch brands. I mean, it was weird. Like, that didn't make a lot of sense to me. Here, it would make more sense to do something like that, or I was thinking of a way to tie Survivor Series into this, and I would really love for them to do one traditional Survivor Series elimination match every year, instead of just, doing away with the entire concept. This year, you can have each GM, and again, this is just one idea. You can have each GM choose 5 ladies, or you can even make them qualify for spots representing Raw and SmackDown. And I can't even believe I'm sitting here pitching brand warfare, which is funny coming from me, I know. But at least here, there would be actual stakes, right? It wouldn't just be Raw versus SmackDown for brand loyalty. Like, who gives a fuck? At least here, there's something tangible at stake. So you get 5 women from Raw, 5 women from SmackDown, and whichever team wins, those women in the match, it doesn't even matter if all but one are eliminated. If their team wins, let's say Raw wins, right? And Sonya Deville is the sole survivor. Raw would get to decide the first U.S. champion among those 5 women. Maybe in a 5-way match. Let's say a 5-way is Saturday night's main event, 2 weeks later. Maybe you can come up with something better, but I like the idea of tying Survivor Series into this in some way. I think that would be one way to do it.